In episode 6 of 100 Goats, the 100 greatest people and events of all time you should know to be a culturally literate person, we'll cover Aristotle, a giant of philosophy who contributed to virtually every branch of the field, and who was also the first person to do several crucial things. Aristotle was the student of Plato, and Plato was the student of Socrates, the towering triumvirate of ancient Greek philosophers. So, what did Aristotle do before anyone else? Number 1, he formalized logic, the philosophical pursuit of the truth, through systematic reasoning. Aristotle contended the structure of an argument's validity is more important than its content, as exemplified in this syllogism. All humans are mortal, Socrates is a human, therefore Socrates is mortal. Even if you change the content from Socrates to, say, Beyonce, the structure holds up. Some may think she's a goddess, but she's flesh and blood too. So, Aristotelian logic dominated the field of thought for 2,000 years until all that changed in the 19th century, when modern logicians like George Boole, Gottlob Frege, and Charles Peirce ushered in a new kind of mathematical logic, but all acknowledged Aristotle's essential contributions and his primary system of logic. Number 2, Aristotle is widely considered, in the Western world, to be the first proper scientist, and he contributed significantly to fields from anatomy to zoology, literally. He even said, when faced with observations or theories, we must favor the facts presented through observation. If only we'd take that advice today. Number 3, we can call Aristotle the first zoologist, and the first marine biologist as well. He spent over 2 years on the island of Lesbos and did extensive research on living creatures, terrestrial, aerial, aquatic, and insects. He classified over 500 animals into genus and species. This was not only astonishing in its scope, but it was utterly without precedent. And he was right about things from ruminants having 4 parts to their stomachs to the reproductive habits of creatures like the octopus and the pussy cat. All this research was summarized in a book with the forgivably presumptuous title, The History of Animals. But Aristotle's life was not all pondering puzzles of logic and observing the sex lives of cephalopods and house cats. Around 340 BCE, King Philip II of Macedon, North Macedonia in today's Europe, hired Aristotle to tutor his then 13-year-old son Alexander, who turned out to be, Alexander the Great. Not much is known about Aristotle's tutelage of young Al, but by 326 BCE, 15 short years later, Alexander had gained himself an empire from Macedon that stretched across much of the known world at the time. So Aristotle was part of a very powerful political in-crowd until a big part of that in-crowd died or was killed. And things changed fast. So after the mysterious death of Macedonian Alexander the Great at just 32 years old, Aristotle was seen as a turncoat. And in the midst of political turmoil between these city-states, Aristotle writes a poem commemorating a tyrant named Hermias, an ally of Macedon who was also Aristotle's father-in-law. So the stupid poem gives Hermias divine powers and likens him to Greek gods. And that was too much. It was considered criminal, and Aristotle was charged with impiety, being irreligious, even heretical. Clearly no fool, he was aware of the fate of Socrates, who'd been charged with the very same crime only 75 years before, and whose fellow citizens had found guilty and voted to execute. So, what does he do? What would you do in his spot? Aristotle hightails it the 50 miles out of Dodge from Athens to Chalcis. It would have taken him about a day on foot, maybe a bit less by horse or camel. And so he fled with his highly scientific mind into voluntary exile on his family's property, located on the lovely island of Evia in Greece. He died there a year later of a digestive ailment at 63. Died, but of natural causes, and a year after the Greek state wanted to get rid of him too. Again, the lesson here is, speaking the truth is a dangerous game, even if you're a philosopher. Maybe especially if you're a philosopher. Choose your thoughts carefully, and your words even more so. That's a skinny on Aristotle. See you on the next episode of 100 Goats.